Welcome everybody to this session on traditional medicines and indigenous ways. We are very happy that today we have 3 moderators and 12 speakers from different countries in the 3 continents, from Africa, Europe, from Asia, and also from Latin America. So this panel started when we had the idea of linking more with each other on the question of the COVID, and is now, although there seem to be the vaccines that will be providing some kind of relief to the current problems we face with the COVID-19. Still, it is there are still seem to be quite a lot of problems, not only about the efficacy of the vaccines, but also about the affordability and also whether they could be widely distributed. And so for us, especially those from the global south, the question is whether the vaccines would be the only way for the prevention and also for the treatment. So this time we have the co-organizing by the Global University for Sustainability, by Lingnan University, and by ALBA movements to be hosting this panel during the World Social Forum sessions. And I'm very pleased to be inviting also Dr. Katharina Weingartner, who is the film director of the film The Fever. We just screened the film in the last 2 hours, and it is a very moving film, and then so many problems have been brought up in the film. So we will be listening to them. So I would welcome you all to this session. So if you could listen to the channels, there's the Spanish channel, English channel, and the Chinese channel. So please click the globe on the bottom of the screen. So now I would like to first introduce myself. I teach cultural studies in Lingnan University in Hong Kong, China. And currently I'm a coordinator of the program on cultures of sustainability in the Center for Cultural Research and Development, Lingnan University. I'm a founding member of the Global University for Sustainability, where we have 200 founding members. And I also had the Global University Executive Team working in Hong Kong. I've been involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China for almost 2 or 3 decades. And I'm board member of the Peace Women Across the Globe, and also Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives. And today we have 2 other moderators who are moderating with me. That is Dr. Nicoletta Dentico. She's a journalist and a senior policy analyst in global health and development. After directing the Doctors Without Frontiers in Italy, she played an active role in the MSF campaign on access to essential medicines. She worked as consultant of the World Health Organization, and she currently leads the Global Health Program for the Society for International Development. And our moderator from Latin America is Mr. Hernan Vargas. He is from the Urban Inhabitants Platform in Venezuela. He also works for ALBA Movement's Secretariat, and he is particularly responsible for political articulations and solidarity. He is also an independent researcher on social reproduction and popular economies. So now I would like to hand over the moderation to my colleague, Dr. Nicoletta, please.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely thrilled about this meeting, this global meeting today. And I think it is a real privilege to be moderating and to be part of creating, designing this appointment. I really want to thank Professor Kinchi Lau and Professor Tsui for assembling us all together and for bringing up this breakthrough discussion. I think it is an absolutely fundamental moment for us to get together and debate about the implications and the many questions that the movie has raised, as Professor Kinchi Lau was mentioning. There are many issues that the movie has triggered. One of the major pedagogies of COVID-19 that is being echoed more and more in the global health community is the need for decolonizing medicines, decolonizing health. And that is why the discussion that we are starting now is particularly timely and particularly relevant because, of course, the pandemic provides a unique opportunity to, take back all the things that we have kind of hidden below the carpet, to bring them back and to make them appear for what they are, relevant issues. The movie, The Fever, talks about malaria. We have discussed it already with Katharina, whom I welcome very much, when the film was launched in Austria. This movie talks about a global disease which is still pretty much around us. But in fact, it kind of winks at COVID-19. It does talk about COVID-19 to a great extent. So I don't think I have to, give any instructions on how we could take some of the teachings of this movie and reverberate the echoes of this movie to what we are all living today in the pandemic. Professor Kinchi Lau was mentioning the vaccine programs in Europe. This is going to be the Europe-Africa session. Of course, as you may know, as you all know, Europe, after 1 year of COVID-19 and after a lot of public funding for the research and development for vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, is now finding itself totally in the hands of a few private companies that are whose power is based on monopolies, and who maybe, I think, will be using this leverage for the future. I was interviewed this morning by Business Insiders, and we were trying to project what year 2021 will be in terms of the access to vaccines fight between governments that have paid and companies that produce. So certainly the idea of having public needs that are totally entrusted into the hands of profit-making entities is a paradigm that has its limitations. So we have always known, the global health community has always known that. But now it's possible, I think, to bring out the idea of new paradigms, of new ways of producing public goods and making drugs, medicines, and vaccines available to everybody, and in a variety of approaches that need to be totally considered and integrated. So it is with great pleasure that I will be starting this moderation with three very important speakers. I just would like to unfortunately mention that we will not be able to have Professor Grace Nambatia from Uganda. She would have been a great contribution, but unfortunately she has connection problems, and we have not been able to get her on this discussion. I think we will have to catch up in a different moment, but we will be entertaining our conversation with the author of the movie, Katharina Weingartner, who is an extremely good film director, as you have seen already, and a very courageous woman. Then we will have Ben Cashdan, who is a filmmaker and an economist in Johannesburg. He has been an economy advisor to Nelson Mandela in 1995 and is now researching a movie on the global pharmaceutical industry. So this is extremely important to have Ben in this discussion. And finally, we have with us Professor Niang, who teaches at the Cheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar in Senegal, who is a specialist in social anthropology and environmental sciences. And he has worked a lot on HIV/AIDS. So, you know, we take different diseases, but we will find a lot of commonalities. I have decided to introduce the speakers right from the start, because you already get a feeling of who is going to weave this discussion in this initial session. So enough of my words, and with all my gratitude again, I'll give the floor now to Katharina Weingartner, the director of The Fever that we have just seen. Katharina, the floor is yours.
Hello to the world. This is very exciting. Thank you so much for putting this together, Professor Kim Chi Lau and your team. It's been amazing to see you pulling this off in such a short time. And thanks for the doctor. I was on my way there, but I stopped to become a creative person. But sounds good, Dr. Katharina Weingartner. I like that. Anyways, thanks for watching the film together. And thanks for your introduction, Nicoletta. Yes, I think I made a film about malaria, but malaria is not the real issue here. It's a film about decolonization, really. And malaria is just one disease. We can do exactly the same with COVID. And it's such an interesting coincidence that the TCM medicine in China is actually using Artemisia annua in a mixture with other herbs to treat COVID, even in the hospitals. I know from somebody who imports TCM medicine herbs to Austria that the Chinese government actually offered the Austrian government 30,000 units of TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, for treatment of the worst COVID cases in Austria, and it was refused by the Austrian government to take it even for free, because they said, how can herbs treat a disease like COVID? It is not rational, it is not evidence-based medicine. No, we refuse that. Just one example. But because our film has taken the perspective from East Africa, and it was a very important step for us to do this, to step back with Western scientists. I have interviewed for this film 150 malaria scientists all over the world, most of them white males. And we made a decision against the will of our producers to not show them in the film, which meant that 4 years ago, I was stopped in my path. Our producers, the public TV stations in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria, removed themselves from the project, which was a highly funded, very prestigious project in Germany and Austria. And they refused to this day to show this film on public television. And their argument is, there are no scientists in this film. There are no scientists in this film. We have a biologist from Nairobi, we have a pharmacologist from Uganda, and we have a herbalist, a very knowledgeable herbalist from Uganda. Now I ask you the questions. Why do these editors and finances from Switzerland, Germany, and Austria tell me that I have no scientists in my film? I think that is the key question. What is science? And is science only what the West is paying and what the West is interested in? So that's one of my key questions, and that's one of my key departures also, where I saw that a filmmaker like me is also running into walls when we do not have somebody like Rehema, who really knows her herbal ways. What was asked from me is that I have a professor from Oxford University, for example, commentate on what Rehema has to say. So only his validation makes Rehema's argument a fact. Everything else, I was told, is a felt reality, not a reality. So what she is doing in her village, getting a whole village malaria free, with prophylaxis with a simple herb, Artemisia, is not a reality. But it took me 7 years to finish the film because of this incredible resistance in Europe to give the way to other knowledge, to indigenous knowledge, to the knowledge of women all over the world, to urban knowledge, to a knowledge that cannot be copyrighted, to a knowledge that has always been there, always, forever, and that is just not respected in the Western or in the global North. Now that was the resistance. But to give you an example from Dr. Nambatya, I was there in December in Uganda, and I had a very interesting meeting with her. After watching the film for 5 minutes, she said, "You are a godsend. It's exactly what we need in Uganda, in every village. We will show this film. I hope the government will be able to support me in getting this film from village to village in Uganda, together with the herb Artemisia afra, which is the local version of Artemisia annua, and which has an even better anti-malarial activity than Artemisia annua, and it grows better in these climates. So we will have the opportunity to go with Rehema, with the film, and with this herb from village to village. And the Dr. Nambatya, who heads the Institute for Herbal Research at the Ministry of Health, wants to make it together with PRESIDE, which is the Presidential Initiative on Epidemic Research. They want to accompany my screening tour through Uganda with a scientific research project that I'm trying to get off the ground now, where we are actually looking at the malaria cases in each village before the film and the herb arrive. And then 6 to 12 months later, want to follow up and see what the actual impact is, so that we can finally have the evidence that is always asked for, to show the world that this herb works against malaria in treatment and prophylaxis. So this is a really exciting moment for me. We are right now, I think, at a point where, I mean, this film has gotten so much interest in Austria, and because of COVID, I was only able to show it in Austria so far. Even we were invited to film festivals from Brazil to Taiwan to China. In China, the film was taken out of a festival due to sensitive content. It did not pass Chinese censorship, unfortunately. In Guangzhou, it was supposed to be at the film festival. So we see there's a lot of other interests who don't want this message to be out. But with this starting point in Uganda now, I'm very excited that we can start this, let me call it a revolution, a herbal revolution, and also a revolution of the mind. And if we can start this from East Africa, I mean, it's the best, I think it's the best starting point to go from those villages through a supporting government and show the powers that be that there is another way, which is carried by women, which is carried by local traditions, which is simple, local, cheap, doable for every family. And also, how can it be prevented? You know, how can this be further prevented? I have not looked at the watch, but let me just give you one example from Dr. Nambatya. When I got there, she just had spent a sleepless night, because they are working on a herbal COVID medicine, which is comprised of bee poison, like the poison that bees have in their, when they give a sting, they give a poison, combined with an herb called Walburgia, I think. And she wanted to do a clinical trial on COVID patients in Uganda. Now, the WHO asks for an insurance of every patient who participates in that trial. She called every insurance agency in Uganda if they will insure those patients. She did not find an insurance agency who would do this. And she said, okay, that means the end of our project. If we cannot insure the patients, we don't get the permission. Now, what do we do? And how can I get around this? And how can our whole country and our whole continent get around these requirements by the WHO? Just to give you an example of what's happening with COVID. And also, I mean, there is COVID research with Artemisia in Mexico right now. There was a big clinical trial in Mexico done by the Max Planck Institute in Berlin, which is a very respected research facility in Germany. And the director of the Max Planck Institute, who is leading this research, told me, once you start dealing with herbs, there's an icy wind blowing against you, and be careful with your work, he told me. And this study will be published this week. So let's see what the international pharmaceutical community can say about organizations like that participating in our research. Just one more thing, maybe 3 minutes. Okay, let me, as a filmmaker, talk about something very important to me. The Fever is a film that, due to the situation with film funding, was done by a Austrian Swiss German team. But I always said that it is a film from an African perspective, and I would prefer to also give the making of these images and the making of this content into African hands. And luckily, the Austrian film funds understand that there has to be a change with who produces the information, who produces the images. Can it forever be the global North who makes the images for the global South and depict people in the global South as victims of their situations, as victims of colonization and so on? And they agreed that we can produce now Fever 2, which will be a film done by a Ugandan director and a Kenyan producer. And we can actually shift the funds to East Africa, which is a really amazing shift, if you know the film funding situation. And they will do a film where they go with Rehema through the villages to make a documentary about how Rehema and these people and health activists and public health activists and scientists and people from the Ugandan government and hopefully many, many women make a film about their experiences and the implementation of this herb in Uganda, which could be a real starting point for a totally different approach to medicine, to who owns the rights to their medicine, and maybe also from a global North perspective, show us new ways how to deal with this information, with these people and with these images. So I'm very excited about this. And I think it is telling that a petition has been started from Switzerland that already has 160 signatures from big pharmaceutical corporations, from tropical medicine institutes, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, from the doctors who tell us about COVID from our TV screens. All these people have signed a petition against our film. They don't want this film to be shown on television anywhere in the world. They don't want it to be shown in cinemas in Germany or Switzerland. And all we can do is now ask for funding. We have started an organization called Plant the Seed, Fight the Fever. It's called Fight the Fever. Here you see it. We have a website. We ask for donations because our film is being censored and we need to get this message out. This is our slogan: plant the seed, fight the fever. The letters are written in Artemisia leaves. And here is the Artemisia seed in the back in an envelope. So I was with this in Uganda. I could have spread thousands of these. The people were ripping them from my hands. Everybody wants to plant this magic plant, Artemisia. And through the film and the seed, I think we can start a revolution. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katharina. Thank you so much for telling us your experience, your struggle. This shows what a movie can do. And you are talking about the herbal revolution and the revolution of the mind. I think really considering one of the key messages that I found in the film, that is really the pandemic is a syndemic. It's actually, you know, a system pathology, not just a health issue. This film, I think, needs to be inserted in this, needs to be contextualized in this type of approach towards COVID-19, absolutely. Thank you very much again. And of course, there will be questions, I guess, coming to you in a later moment of our discussion. If Ben Cashdan allows me, I would like to give the floor first to Professor Niang, because we have touched upon COVID-19. We, of course, have touched upon malaria through the movie. Professor Niang, as well as being a social anthropologist, he is actually an expert on environmental and environmental sciences, and he has worked a lot on HIV/AIDS and public health, as we were saying earlier. So I would like to have his perspective first on what the movie shows, on what Katharina has said, and then of course I'll give the floor to Ben Cashdan, who is working on the global pharmaceutical industry. So let's keep on just looking at, you know, the situation, the diseases, and then go back to the more global perspective. Professor Niang, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta, and thank you very much, Professor Kingshi. I am very pleased to be here, and I thank you very much for inviting me. I can say that I was very moved by the film, because as you said, as Katharina said just earlier, it's about the mind and the mindset. I think that is very, very important here. And I like your conclusion when you say syndemic. I would maybe change it a little bit and say also it's an epistemic in the sense of epidemic of epistemes and of epistemicide, of killing the knowledge, killing some particular knowledge. And this is very striking, because this killing of the knowledge go in connection with denying culture, cultural achievement, cultural identities, cultural constructions, and erasing this culture to impose only Western culture. So it's interesting, because if you look at many African cultures, in particular many African languages like mine, we use one word, garab. Garab means the medicine, but the same word means also the tree or the plant, because the medicine, healing is healing through plants, herbs, seeds, and trees. So this vegetable is, the mention of the vegetable is at the root of. If you look at this side, what is the tree? What is the plant? It's the knowledge. The knowledge is embedded. Okay. Now, I am trying to say that if you look at the languages, and because the languages is a reflection of the culture, and the issue here is the clash that the many African cultures have been trying to preserve their philosophical understanding of the reality, instead of just having this culture, this cultural heritage, to be erased and replaced by one single cultural model, that is Western model. Oh, so in these languages, in many of these languages, the word for medicine, for cure, for treatment is garab. Garab is the same word than the trees or the plant. So you cannot envisage, you cannot envision a healing without references to plants and trees. And plants and trees are also metaphors for knowledge. Knowledge have been pushed aside and impose only one type of so-called scientific knowledge. This is at the root of pandemic. So and this starts when I talk about epistemicity. It starts from the education, from the universities. How can we see that the producer of knowledge of African culturally knowledge or other knowledge, how these people are have been denied of their status of knowledge production, learn from the movie. And secondly, when I can bring a lot of anecdotes, reports, and when a knowledge producer, what a traditional healer will go and get the medicine for you. If you go to the plant, he starts by greeting the plant, by recognizing the plant, by singing the plant. So there is an attitude of humility. So this attitude of humility is an ecological attitude that doesn't put the human being, the man, at the center or on top of the nature, but put it in a situation of someone of lower status in front of the nature and in front of the plant. This philosophical principle is erased in the classical normal science, and it is at the root of this ecological disaster that we are heading for. So it looks like with COVID-19 is not only a health crisis, it's also an ecological crisis, and show us where we are heading for if we continue the hegemony of this Western paradigm. And if you go, I can use another word. So from the knowledge, how the knowledge circulates in the society. Knowledge is not something private, something reserved to some people. It's knowledge. Now, the condition of transmission will look at some ethical issues. We will not, the traditional healer will not give the knowledge to everybody. And then they give it to them. So it's an initiatic system of transmission of the knowledge where the verification of the criteria of ethic will be part of the transmission of knowledge. And humility, how humility is constructed, and in a way that will allow the transmission of the knowledge. Because this knowledge, once it's reached a certain point, it's become popular knowledge. That means that everybody will take the herbs, but know that the herbs will help for that, so that thing was that. So the knowledge will be embedded into the families, and in that families, and in that space, who will control the use of the knowledge and bring some additional use is the woman. So woman at the center of she will be at the center of knowledge production and the fabric of health. Yes, on the fabric of health, that's the fabric of health in many African cultures. And as you see, the modern scientific knowledge which exclude women as a central figure of that. So I would like to, some issues, I will be around these issues of ethic. You know, when you go to many situations, people, the healer will drink the medicine first before he give it to you, to tell you the empathy. If you die, I die with you. So the power relation is something completely different. And finally, I share with you, the issue here is not only called COVID. The issue is decolonizing the mind. And the issue is here. How can we shake the trees, the cockatoo? How can we challenge the power of the power relation within the knowledge production in order to allow all societies, because the heritage of humankind is what Western culture as showing, African societies are showing in front of COVID, is not biological resilience, it's social resilience, it's the way of life, it's how they interact with themselves, and what kind of lesson can be learned that can be shared with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Niang. Your pearls of wisdom, of really, you know, the profound human knowledge that we really need to recuperate if we want to have a chance of survival on this planet. So thank you so much indeed. And I now give the floor to Ben Cashdan. Ben, another filmmaker and someone that is actually going to produce another pearl of information and reporting on a particularly important issue, the role of the global pharmaceutical industry. Ben, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I hope so.
Indeed. Thank you very well. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicoletta, Kinchi, Katharina, Professor Niang, and everybody. In South African style, I have to say, long live the solidarity of people all around the world for decolonizing knowledge and healthcare. And down with the solidarity, fake solidarity between countries like in the BRICS group, that is to shine the chains of imperialism, I think, these days, and not to offer real solidarity. I'm a late arrival on this panel. I was just hours ago by my friend and comrade Patrick Bond to stand in for him as he had to rush to the doctor. I stayed up last night wondering why he was kind enough to ask me to stand in for him and to stay up all night preparing for this event. It could be that I'm the $1 million man. And here's my proof. This is the medicine. This is my herb that I take on a daily basis. Some of you might recognize it's a very famous medicine produced by our friends at Novartis, which I take for my Gleevec, which I take for my leukemia. And it will cost across my lifetime $1 million to keep me alive. Luckily, I don't have to pay the full amount, but more of that in my film. Or could it be that when I was in Mandela's office, we were fighting one of the first big struggles to decolonize big pharma, which was the struggle, of course, for affordable antiretrovirals, which we won, I believe, with a global civil society movement. And we got AIDS medicines down from $12,000 to about $30 per month. Huge drop through asserting the political will of the people of the world. So my talk is supposed to be on the case for COVID-19 vaccines to be global public goods. I could be out of place on this panel because I'm not necessarily looking for alternatives, but perhaps there's a tension as we decolonize between the perspective that says we all own as global public goods everything, all the knowledge of the world, versus an approach that says we need alternatives to so-called Western cures that may not be so Western, in fact. That's a tension, a discussion point maybe for us as we go forward. It seems common sense that COVID-19 vaccines are public goods. They benefit us all like world peace or fresh air. But in economics, we have this narrow definition that you're all aware of a public good as something which is non-excludable and non-rivalrous. You can't stop anybody from benefiting from it, and it doesn't matter how much one person uses. There's plenty for everybody else. So it does get a bit tricky when we're starting to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. Traffic lights are public goods, but let's consider airbags or life jackets. They are bought as commodities. They could get used up. So we had to make, as a society, we had to make them public goods. We had to legislate that they should be plentiful, they should be universally available, and that, you know, it shouldn't be a case of people who are in accidents being a cost to the public health system, or suffering as individuals. So we had to make them non-excludable and non-rivalrous. Why don't we do that with COVID-19 vaccines? We have the tools, the Doha Declaration on TRIPS, of course, that allows us to do compulsory licensing and so on. The manufacturers say no. So let's deal with their objections. They say we have a right to our monopolies, our patents, our profits in return for our risk and investment. They say, in fact, beyond that, that we as the people, we need them to make profit to drive future innovation. They're very clever. They say their profits are the public goods. In fact, of course, Nicoletta in MSF knows much better than me. We have all the arguments against this. First, on the right to profit in return for investment. Check the facts. It's nonsense. Moderna received $1 billion or more from the US government. AstraZeneca, you know, millions of investment through the University of Oxford, and all the companies, even Pfizer, who say, no, we didn't take any public money. It's nonsense. They all benefited from 30 years, 40 years of public investment in how to sequence DNA and manufacture RNA, and they all got these advance orders from the US government. So no, Big Pharma, you don't have a right to mark up your vaccines from a cost price of $2 to a sale price of $18. You don't even have a right to mark up your sale price from $2 to $5, which is the price being quoted by the Serum Institute of India to South Africa for the AstraZeneca's vaccine, more than they quoted to Europe. Europe's going to get that vaccine cheaper than Africa because Europe invested in the research, they say. We reject your right to a 200% or a 2,000% markup. Outrageous. What about the argument that mega profits drive innovation? It's just not true. Great recent research looking back at 50 years of mega profits by Big Pharma, clearly showing it has disincentivized innovation. You get less innovation as you get more profit, because Big Pharma says, well, we better keep that return to our shareholders, so we better find cheaper ways, lazy ways to just recycle old cures and less innovation. So it's not true. So the real Big Pharma game here in the COVID-19 world of vaccines is externalize the risk, internalize the profit. Classic capitalist corporate welfare. So that sets the stage for our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, faced by vaccine nationalism, speaking at the other global gathering yesterday, not the World Social Forum, but the World Economic Forum. And I'll paraphrase him. He said, please, Western nations, give us your extra doses. You don't need them, boss. There has been an effort at the WTO to waive intellectual property that many of us have been following, to allow for a people's vaccine, removing monopolies, reducing prices and scarcity, making vaccines so plentiful, so cheap that they become public goods, non-excludable, non-rivalrous. But President Ramaphosa, yesterday at the WEF, he didn't mention it. Even though South Africa has been part of that initiative, the WTO, he didn't mention it as he spoke to world leaders and corporate CEOs. And returning to my metaphor of the crashing car or the life jacket for the boat, could that hold the seeds of why he didn't? Could it be that when the boat is sinking or the car is crashing or the gun is to all of our heads, metaphorically speaking, you don't want to be the one to rock the boat? President Ramaphosa would rather, like many developing countries, be friends with the salesman. Let's take 10 life jackets for the family before the boat sinks. Let's not discuss the framework today. Or in other words, to really, take this in a cynical vein, if South Africa can do a few quick deals to buy 10 million doses and beg for 5 million more, at least we'll be better off than Mozambique or Gabon. In that way, South Africa reinforces its position as the sub-imperialists of the global system of vaccine nationalism and corporate welfare. And notably, South Africa has veered away from seriously considering the Chinese developed vaccine or the Russia developed vaccine or the cheaper Indian home produced vaccine, not the AstraZeneca one, the other one, or God forbid, a socialist vaccine from Cuba, defining them as less well-regulated medicine approval zones. That's what we have from our medicine regulator. Under the current global vaccine apartheid, we'd prefer to have proper vaccines, capitalist vaccines, colonial vaccines, expensive vaccines. The irony is that at this precise moment, with the gun to our head, the ship sinking, the car crashing, it's actually the powerful, important moment to change the system, to build the global solidarity for a people's vaccine. We may never have another chance. If we don't seize this opportunity, tens of millions of people will die in the global south, proving that some lives are worth less than others. But even more than that, as the Financial Times opinioned this week, it won't be good for the rich countries to leave out the so-called poor countries. The virus will mutate unchecked and come back and get them in the rich countries. So COVID vaccines are really to be understood by us in the World Social Forum, in the global social movements, as public goods and truly global public goods, like the fight against climate change. But we have to fight to make that happen. It's a repeat of our South African struggle for affordable AIDS medicines, a struggle that was won on the streets of Johannesburg, the streets of Philadelphia, San Francisco, New Delhi, amongst others, probably in Rome as well, Nicoletta. The WHO's COVAX does not go far enough. It's nonsense. It's a purchasing club to make the pharmaceutical companies richer. We need research pooling, open sourcing, immediate tech transfer, price transparency. In the first instance, all the empty laboratories, it's Sanofi or Merck, anyone who didn't develop a vaccine, tomorrow they must be producing the vaccines we know work at cost and distributing to the world. And then, as with ARVs, we need to share the formula with the world. My partner is a health scientist. She says it's a 3-page protocol that you need to make RNA, publish it, let generic firms get to work in India, Brazil, Thailand, Cuba, and we can have enough vaccines for the world at cost. Of course, as others have said, it's part of the larger battle to decolonize intellectual property, whether it's copywriting research, whether it's patenting medicines, and we better do it now if we want to get health, education, knowledge, and sustainable livelihoods to all our people. Just to end, I'll repeat the question I wanted to ask Professor Niang and others. Do we need alternatives? Is it a matter of alternatives? Or as we decolonize the knowledge that allows us all to be healthy and all to prosper, whether it's a plant that can be seen to benefit malaria sufferers, or whether it's global vaccines, what we should be doing is reclaiming all the knowledge as our knowledge. They're not Western vaccines. They're the knowledge of the world, whether Chinese or Russian or made in America, in Trump land, under a MAGA regime. We don't care. They're all of our vaccines. They're the global public goods, whether plants or whether high-tech science, which anybody can perform. So this may be a counterpoint, alternatives versus reclaiming everything. Thank you so much for giving me the chance.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. If not now, when, as we would say, if we don't do it now, after 20 years of struggle, disease by disease, drug by drug, this is not going to lead us very far. And this is actually the time to turn the page. I think as we liberate knowledge from its proprietary regime, we will liberate the various forms of knowledge that exist, thank God, in this world, the biodiversity of knowledge that exists in this world. I really wish to thank you very much for your very inspiring interventions. So I think we've come to an end. I think it's a very enticing, a very stimulating start, thanks to the speakers of this panel. And at this point, I would like to give back the floor to our host, to Kinchilao, for the second session. We move from Africa to Asia. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and thank you for this very important trigger, epistemic stimulation that we need. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Nicoletta, and thanks to our three very eminent speakers. So we will come back to Africa. So please do not leave, because we will be coming back after we go to Asia and Latin America. And from the film actually that was screened, we learned that every year in Africa, 1 million people died of malaria. And even now with so-called all these medicines, etc., so still 500,000 people die every year in Africa because of malaria. And of course, we know that Dr. Tuyuyo got the Nobel Prize for the on the question of artemisinin, but then still that doesn't seem to have helped the situation. And I think just now we were drawn to the question of not only about whether there are these practices on the field. We see all these kind of obstacles, especially from the major pharmaceutical companies. And so they have, and we can also see the kind of influence they have on national governments, on the WHO. And so the question is to tackle the question of health. We need to see it is not only a medical problem, it is also a problem of global structures, of profits, of greed, and of power. So now I would like to move to our Asian speakers. And we are supposed to hear first from Dr. Tusham Ralal from Kerala, but she has not been able to sign in yet. So we will first listen to our speakers from China, and then we will come to India. So first, I would like to invite Professor Tsui Jade Margaret, who is our partner in organizing this activity. She is Associate Professor at the Institute of Rural Reconstruction of China, Southwest University in Chongqing. And she's also visiting scholar at the Federal University of Espírito Santo in Brazil. She is board member of the Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives and also one of the founding members of Global University for Sustainability. And she has been actively involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China since the year 2000. So Professor Sid, please.
Kinchi and I wrote an article entitled The Need for Recovering the Subjugated Knowledge of Traditional Chinese Medicine, published on Development Journal in December 2020. My presentation is based on our observations and arguments. The pandemic is a call for the world to not only make COVID-19 vaccine a global public good or a common good, but also to instill universal access to healthcare, where the solution is either waiting for the effective vaccines or watching people die like flies in the herd immunity scheme. Apparently, no other alternatives are in sight. However, for the billions who will need to find a way to survive, is there indeed no alternative? China has, compared to the United States, Brazil, or India, effectively contained the pandemic spread, as well as its casualties. One major factor is the preventive measures of wearing masks, washing hands, and practicing isolation. Despite the privatization of hospital and healthcare for over 2 decades, there are institutional mechanism and popular mobilization that contribute to the efforts to fight the pandemic. What has also drawn attention is the widespread use of traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, based on traditional wisdom and practice, popular reception, and inexpensive local herbs. The starting point is to see that whatever their different effectiveness, Western medicine and TCM belong to two parallel, if not opposite, philosophies, approaches, and treatment methods. TCM has a history of, some say, 8,000 to 10,000 years in China. Body dissection parts and names of disease were recorded on bones dating back to 3,500 years ago. The first medical classic was Huangdi Neijing, estimated to be compiled between 475 and 206 BC. Another classics of 450 years ago is the Compendium of Materia Medica, considered 本草纲目, considered the most comprehensive classic with details of herbs and animal parts for medicinal use. There are thousands of medical books and manuscripts on TCM. However, within a century, TCM has gone under. There are external and internal factors contributing to the going under of TCM with the introduction of Western medicine. Culturally, the West was seen as superior after its military victory in China since the mid-19th century, starting with the Opium War in 1842. The significance of TCM has regained recognition only when alternative treatments and therapies are being sought to fight SARS in 2003 and even in today to fight COVID-19. According to official statistics, the 三药上方, the free medicines and free medical formulas approved by the state had an overall effective rate of over 90% in relieving symptoms, preventing mild and common cases from developing into severe cases, improving the recovery rate and reducing a fatality rate, and boosting the recovery of patients during their rehabilitation process. In terms of cost, the average expense for treating by Western medicine of a confirmed COVID-19 patient was RMB 23,000, around $3,400, and for a severe case is RMB 150,000, is about $22,000. In contrast, one course of treatment of 3 days with lung cleansing and detoxifying decoction costs only RMB 100. That means around $15. TCM or TM everywhere have baskets of problems to handle. It is not as if Western medicine is problematic or inadequate. That TM becomes the golden recipe. Not only is there a question of heritage or nurturing medical practitioners to take on the lineage, there is also a major devastation and disappearing of traditional herbal plants under rapid urbanization, massive deforestation, and raging climate change. We would like to stress that when scientifically proven is the magic sword reached by the hegemon of Western medicine, the alternative is not resorting to anti-science, but an interrogation of how the anti-concept of science has become monolithic, upheld by the military and monetary muscles of the Western powers, so that the universalistic idea of science comes to refer not only to Eurocentric theories and practices, negating and demonizing other long-standing theories and practices. What also needs to be interrogated is the approach and methodology of modern science. To counter the stress on scientifically proven, drawing on long traditions of diverse civilizations, we should acknowledge the wisdom of the culturally proven, putting problems and solutions in context. When one day profit-making is removed from essential medicines, when food and fresh water is guaranteed for all humans on Earth, when diverse cultures gain genuine recognition and respect, we can together survive. Thank you very much.
So now I would like to introduce our second speaker from China. And so this is Dr. Guo Xinzhi. She is the Chief Medical Officer and Director of the Shanxi Poliomyelitis Rehabilitation Hospital and the specialist and pioneer in the recovery, prevention, and study of poliomyelitis and senile dementia. She had conducted 20 years of intensive research into the treatment and had tested acupuncture and medicine on her own body. Dr. Guo has achieved many breakthroughs in the treatment of poliomyelitis, which was previously deemed incurable, and she is very well known in China and internationally. So now we have done a pre-recording of her speech yesterday, so we are now showing this to you.
大家好，我在山西太原，我叫郭新志，我就是
山西，my name is 郭新志。
现在呢，我就是80
My job is working on rehabilitation medicine.
另外，他有多动症啊，也就是我们说的
Like you see a boy here, he has mental retardation. And language barrier and ADHD and autism. He used to be very naughty, and after 5 courses of treatment, he's been quieter, even though he hasn't really recovered. He has to continue on some treatment. So his problem is that his brain cannot control his behavior. So you are seeing, I have to do some acupuncture on him, insert the needles on his hands, arms, face, eyes, and his head. And you can tell I am pointing different acupuncture points on his arm. And this boy, he knows that he will recover, and he's doing much better after he does acupuncture. So he doesn't want to miss any one of them. So, and all these needles are for one use only, and the needle needs to be sterilized. So I am doing acupuncture for him on different acupuncture points, and they are for different they are the names of different acupuncture points, and they have different functions. And some. So I'm doing a technique like twirling, and every minute I turn 180 times, or 3 times in total. So after his hands and arms, I am doing the face acupuncture for him. And for some acupuncture point, it's good for to recover his language ability. And some are for his like nose, eyes, and mouth. And some acupuncture points are good for his spine development and for his blood vessel. some are for to stabilize his emotion zone. So different acupuncture point. You can tell the boy, sometimes even is he who reminds me to oh, you please don't forget to insert needle on this acupuncture point. So one of the technique is so for his face, for his face, we have to restore the needle very quickly. And now I am doing acupuncture on his head. These are the different acupuncture point names. There are 2 acupuncture points on the back of his head, which are a bit difficult if I'm not experienced enough. The needles on the back of his neck cannot stay long. I have to restore it right afterwards. Oh, so this is the first the child. So this is the second child. You can tell his hand and foot coordination. He has problem in hand and foot coordination. So similar to the first boy, I am doing acupuncture for his left arm, which is good for his right brain. If child comes for treatment, when he or she is under 1 year old, he or she will recover much faster and much better than a teenager or adult. So because the society is in a much faster speed, like depression, anxiety, and stroke, become quite normal in our society. Even people can get it in a much younger age. So you could tell there in the video there were 3 patients. If it comes earlier, if the younger they come, treatment, the effect of the treatment is much better. Even some of my patients, they develop quite well, like as a normal person who can go to university. So one course of treatment is 30 times, and every year at least 3 times. There are a lot of like depression, anxiety, stroke, people who cannot sleep well, and all these are quite temporary. When you come to do some treatment, you can be recovered. So I am the vice chairman of World Acupuncture Federation and also the vice chairman of World Chinese Medicine Federation. I am a certified chief physician on cerebral infarction and general medicine. I have won 1 Science and Technology Progress Award for 5 times, and I have been received by our chairman. You can tell these are all my awards and all the independent intellectual property rights awards. Yeah, it's almost like 40 years, 49 years since I started this treatment. So over the last 39 years, we have treated over 200,000 patients in China from 80 countries, and the effective rate is 97.8%, and the full recovery rate is 49.7%. So once again, the earlier you treat the symptom, the easier and the faster you can recover. So I'm very happy that I can relieve the pain for mankind and for the good of mankind. Thank you.
We did this pre-recording yesterday with Dr. Guo, and she's one of the many women that I admire very much, and she was also nominated for the 2005 1000 Women for the Nobel Peace Prize project, and she has been doing a lot of these promotion and also training courses to patients and to doctors. So if you would like to hear more about that, then we could give you some of the links, and we also hope that there could be more connections with the traditional ways of treatment. So now I would like to invite Dr. Janji Fang. She is Deputy Director of the Meridian Research Center of Beijing Yanhuang, and also President of the Beijing Yifang Boshan Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine. She has been engaged in Western medical clinical practice for nearly 20 years and has accumulated rich clinical experience. In the late 1990s, she began to do theoretical research on traditional Chinese medicine. And her books include fire therapy of TCM and also body control bioelectrotherapy of TCM. She is with us in the room tonight, but she wanted to make sure that her speech would be well understood by the interpreters. So she also did a pre-recording of her speech. So we are going to show the speech, but then during the question and answer session, so we would like to invite her to speak to you and to answer questions. So now let us listen to Dr. Zhang.
的各位领导、专家、学者。
Hello everyone. Everyone, hello. I am from Beijing Yanhuang Meridian Research Center, Associate Dean of Beijing Yanhuang Meridian Research Center, and also, so today, what I want to share with you is the relationship between traditional Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy. So if you want to know the relationship between Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy, so we have to understand first what is Chinese medicine and what is so traditional Chinese medicine is our national medicine, and it's a quite comprehensive subject with a theoretical and practical experience, and it studies our life, human's life and health, and disease, transformation, and prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. It's a comprehensive subject. So it has a long history, thousands of years. So now I want to share with you the structure of Chinese medicine theory. So the first one is the basic of philosophy is Qi monism and the theory of yin and yang and 5 elements. And the second one is guiding ideology of this wholeness. There's a concept of wholeness. And the fourth one is the physiology and pathology of visceral and meridian as the core of study. And the last one is dialectical treatment. So what's the relationship between traditional medicine and the philosophy? So what is Chinese philosophy? It is the worldview and methodology of what ancient Chinese think of all existence in nature. And so from in history, Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy are closely related, and it's correlated and intertwined. Philosophical thoughts have penetrated into all aspects of the entire Chinese medicine system. So these are the two categories of Chinese philosophical thought. The first one is the cosmology of this Qi monism. So actually, Qi is the functioning element of universe. It's like the Tao. As we can see, we have 24 hours divided our day and night. We have 4 seasons. And so Qi in our body is changing always. So what's the meaning of this yin, yang, and 5 elements? So the universe is divided into heaven and earth, or sky and earth. And sky and earth are divided into yin and yang. Everything is the product of the harmony of yin and yang. And the soul of yin and yang is about balance. Only balance could beget health. So these two philosophies are the core, are important part and the basic theory of Chinese medicine. For the last 2,000 years, it has been supporting the development of Chinese medicine and the clinical practice of it. So traditional Chinese medicine, what's the status in the heart of our Chinese people? So traditional Chinese medicine is the most complete system of all kinds of traditional medicine in human history. It's very experienced and influential, and it's very valuable. And its philosophy emphasized the treatment based on this dialectic treatment, and emphasize the concept of the wholeness. We treat our body as a whole, not as a part. And also harmony between our mind and our body, and man and nature, society and environment, and the unity and the balance of all these factors. So yeah, it is very holistic. So as we have been talking about, COVID is a wake-up call for human society. And in today's world, with the rapid development of technology and economic, health has become the most important issue. And many of us have realized that health is much more important than wealth. And the prevention of disease is more important than treatment. And but how we can really prevent COVID, and how we can really enhance our immune system. And in China, our government have been very care about people's health. So there are some healthcare method in response to this epidemic. So today I want to introduce you a national project which is called 312 radium exercise. And it is publicized by our Health Commission. In order, it's like an exercise to help COVID patients to recover better and quicker. So now I want to share with you this 312 meridian exercise and the method. So the developer or creator of this exercise is Professor Zhu Zhongxiang. He's a well-known meridian expert, and he has been awarded many medals for many countries. So, and the exercise he developed has benefited more than 50 million people around the world. And it was recommended as the scientific fitness method by the State's Board General Administration in back to 1997. So I would say that this exercise is a golden key to open the health of the door, the door to health. And the philosophy of Chinese medicine is both about cosmology and life science. And Professor Zhu, he knows that this exercise is the soul of life. And there are 6 features of this exercise. First one is self-treatment. Second one is all treatment. And then it's cure, easy to learn and low cost. And the prevention and treatment of common or difficult or complicated disease. And this exercise, I could say, it is scientific, it is effective, and it is authentic, so that we can save our money and to cure all disease and stay healthy. So, and thank you so much.
So you can see that, well, we don't have the time to do the demonstration of the 312 meridian exercise. Of course, you could also search and then look for it. The 3 refers to 3 acupuncture points, and 1 means an abdominal breathing, and the 2 is 2 squatting exercises. So just now, Dr. Zhang said that this is low cost. Actually, it is no cost. And this for us, when we are doing the our rural reconstruction movement in China, in the villages, then we always do this, promote this as a kind of exercise to for body for body enhancement. The problem is, as you just heard, these we have had thousands of years on not only acupuncture or on the Qi exercises, but then the question is, many of these are not recognized by the WHO or by the so-called Western medicine, because Western medicine, then they require that you have to be clinically proved and tried. But then by clinically proved, they refer to only the kind of Western medicine's way of doing things. So even when certain practices have been there for thousands of years, they are seen as unscientific, and therefore which they would be said to be infeasible and ineffective. And I think it is not only in China, but also in Africa, in India, in many places in the world where we face similar problems. that, for example, the FDA would validate a lot of Western medicines, and yet for Chinese medicines or Indian medicines, then it is very hard for them to be validated. So, for example, this time for the COVID-19, so we have very effective medicines for early stage treatment, but then these are not accepted in the Western many countries in the West. So now we would like to move from China to India. And we are very happy to invite Dr. Tushara Lal, who is a research assistant under the Research and Development Wing of Pankala Kasturi Herbals Private Limited in Kerala, India. She has teaching experience in various Ayurvedic colleges in Kerala as assistant professor for about 10 years in both clinical and non-clinical undergraduate teaching. And she has been involved in the field of research recently. So now, please, Dr. Tushara Lal.
Good evening to all respected luminaries. I'm Dr. Tushara Lal, Research Assistant, Pankaja Kasturi Herbals Limited, India. And the institution where I'm working, they have various patent medicines for different pathologies related to respiratory or digestive system or cardiac pathologies and so on. And they are all Ayurvedic formulations. And I today want to share some glimpse of Ayurveda in indigenous ways. Like, because we are natives and it is so linked with in our genes, the practice of Ayurveda from our home itself, we have many ways through which we get accommodated to this life science. For example, Ayurveda discusses about seasons, and among these seasons, it is classified under two categories. One is Adana Kala, that is where the environment is in a position where a lot of infections could affect the animals or plants or the any living species would be affected by a lot of infections. And that is the Kala, or that time period is considered to be from January to mid July. And then the next category of seasons are Visarga Kala, that is from mid-July to December. And that is the time where environment is favorably protecting us from the infections. So most of the pandemics or epidemic infections, if we see, that have a great spread during the initial seasons. And that is what we observe in almost the viral diseases or the epidemics we have seen here. And many a times from the ancient people, especially in India and in Kerala, they have a way of rituals which have been followed so that they could get compatible with the environment, their body could prevent the infections. So it is sort of a preventive immunity raising kind of rituals which is advised in Ayurveda, which has been followed from years and years throughout in this Bharat or in India. So among that, if I'll tell you one, like during these initial seasons, as I've said, January to mid-July, there are a lot of festivals and celebrations where people take sweet dishes or pongal. We say pongal, magara pongal, and so that is the rice pudding which is being made with jaggery and other spices like elaichi, then sugar and banana and all. So it is a nutritious food which has the elements that is also included under the herbs or herbal remedies that could give you nourishment or protect you from various epidemics. Likewise, the day-to-day rituals, if you take diurnal rituals, if you take, Ayurveda has very strictly followed a set of rules. That is, people should follow all this in their day-to-day life, in the seasonal changes, so that they should be much safer in the preventive aspect from the epidemics. So that is, Ayurveda is so well linked with our life that we cannot separate it from the Ayurvedic point of view or our way of life. So it is very well, everyone is like following most of the practices which has been told or mentioned in our classics. Then now if we come from the prevention side to a little more clinical side, most of the joint diseases is been very well having a good prognosis by Ayurvedic ways of healing. Like if you consider the osteoarthritis, so that is a joint disorder, and the symptom is pain, and whenever there is pain there is definitely tissue damage. So how the Ayurvedic approach is, like how to repair the tissue and pacify the aggravated toxins and bring the normalcy back to the body. So that is how we see it. So for that, first and foremost thing is to bring repair to the tissue. The tissue damage should be corrected, and that is done by the medicated oils that is processed with Ayurvedic herbs, that is applied to that area, and the massage is given. When you do the round massages or which stimulates the venous return, so then there is a heat energy which is generated when you have roundabout movements around your joints. So by that heat there is vasodilatation, there is dilatation of the vessels. The medicine essence which is present, that is the Ayurvedic herbal essence that is present in the oil, that is absorbed by the skin to the inner deeper tissues, like to the muscles, to the joints, to the cartilage, to the synovial joint, and so on. So that causes a tissue repair and the bringing of pacified doshas. We term it as doshas. We have three doshas according to Ayurvedic classics: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and each dosha have its own symptoms. So whenever there is an aggravation in Vata dosha, there is the painful conditions, dryness or degradation, degeneration, all such symptoms are seen. So when this medicated oil is applied around the joint, it is absorbed into the joint, the tissues are being repaired slowly, and there is loss of reduce of symptoms. So this is a very usual practice. This need not be required an Ayurvedic doctor or an admission in an Ayurvedic hospital, which is daily practiced day to day in most of the families, especially older people. They buy the Ayurvedic oils, they just apply it, and they get relief. So this is a simple glimpse of Ayurveda in our indigenous way, and many things are there which in the following sessions we would share. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And from what we just heard from China and India, then we see that there are a lot of similarities in terms of the approach, the philosophy, and what we find in common is that we do not see the person as separated from the environment, from the habitat, from the context. And so the approach is usually a holistic one. But then usually this kind of approach under Eurocentric views would be seen as superstitious or unscientific or backward. But then I think now we are going to hear from Latin America, and then you will see how similar there are, well, in these kind of approaches between Chinese, Indian, and also the indigenous communities in Latin America. So now I would like to hand over to Hernan Vargas, our moderator for Latin America. Hernan, please.
Gracias, Kinchi. Gracias a todas y a todos. Con mucho gusto de estar aquí en este espacio. Gracias a la compañera de la India.
Thank you
bueno,
to our friend from India.
Tal como decía recientemente en la presentación, compañeras, yo soy militante de ALBA Movimientos.
Presentator said, I am a militant of ALBA movement platform, and we are very grateful for the opportunity to participate in the midst of this civilizatory crisis of capital, to have a look to the traditional medicine and the current juncture. We believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has been a main driver, and it has demonstrated the crisis of the civilizatory Western society model. We are going to listen to several participants of the Andean region. We are going to have Jorge Isawa from Peru. He works with a peasant agriculture, and we will also listen to a representative of Venezuela, Jesus Garcia from the urban communes. And then we're going to listen to a speaker from Bolivia. She works with the diversity themes and farmers. Her name is Dentico. And we will also look at the experience of the indigenous traditional medicine in the Amazonas region with our friend Magno. But in order to introduce this discussion, I would just like to address some ideas, to share some ideas with you. I would like to share the screen now and to show you. In this graph, you can see, this is a graph that was published by the Executive Secretary of ALBA TCP in Latin America. And in this graph, we can see how the rich got richer during the pandemic. And we see here some of the CEOs of the multinationals. We have here Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and this shows how during the pandemic their wealth has increased. And I wanted to show you this because this is an example of how in the midst of the crisis that the humanity is going through, in order to humanity who is striving for life, we can see how the richest have an opposite situation where they are getting richer and richer. We have 100 million infections, 2 million people dead. But at the same time, while the peoples are struggling for life, rich are becoming richer. And this is an example of the civilizatory Western model. And in Latin America, we see that 100 million infected people, and only Brazil and the United States represent a third part of all the world infections, 34 million if you add US and Brazil. US 26 million, Brazil 8 million infected, but we have the same amount of deaths in Brazil and in United States. With India are the countries with the highest level of infections and deaths. We just saw recently how the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he raised with a lot of pride how they had been successful in weakening the BRICS country, and how Brazil and India did no longer make part of the BRICS country. It is important to mention this because this is an example of the crisis of the Western civilization, and we can see what is the model that they want to impose to us. In the case of Latin America, United States and Brazil have the third part of all infections. In the case of ALBA, Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, they do not reach the sum of all the infections of these countries do not reach 200,000 infections, not even reaches that figure. It doesn't have to do with figures. It has to do with how to prioritize life in the state policies. And another thing that I would like to mention is that in the global south in general, there is urgency to strengthen the community cooperatives efforts, mutualistas, mutualism. Carlos Methadra from Italy, he calls it that way. And in the midst of the crisis of coronavirus, all these networks that existed from the legacy of the Aboriginous indigenous peoples, or a legacy of the resistance that is led in urban communities, has been translated into more strength within the communities that enable us to be stronger. In the case of Venezuela, for instance, it has only with the alliance between the government and the communities and an important level of awareness, we have been able to flatten the curve. And this formula has enabled us to move forward in 2020 and 2021 and to face the anti-imperialistic, the imperialistic blockade, just as Cuba did in the struggle against COVID-19. They also need to face the coercive unilateral measures by the United States. So the ALBA TCP, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples, has raised the importance of levying the sanctions in the midst of the pandemic, but also has raised the issue of the creation of a vaccine bank so that we can combat together the pandemic. We see how countries with high level of infections in the pandemic are the same countries that have been making a monopoly with the purchases of the vaccine. But we, on the contrary, are promoting solidarity, production, alliances with other countries to have access to the vaccine through the creation of a common vaccine bank. And over the first months of the pandemic in Venezuela, the president started speaking about the importance of the traditional medicine and the traditional means. And the mainstream media started mocking these initiatives. But today in Venezuela, we have developed from research that has been done how to reduce the contagion and the infection levels of coronavirus. So this was just something I wanted to share with you. And I will now give the floor to Jorge. Jorge teaches at the San Cristobal University, the National University of Huamanga in Ayacucho in Peru. He has also worked with peasant farming and indigenous farming as part of his current practices. So welcome, Professor Jorge Ishizawa, who has sent a pre-recorded video with his participation.
Starting on the question of vaccines, of course, it should be a public good. I don't think it. I mean, the whole idea of the initial idea about vaccines were as public goods. I mean, it's only now under capitalism and this tribe of liberalism that corporations have taken that over. And you see, there is a whole question about vaccines that I don't really know. I mean, I really don't know about that. I know that there are vaccines. The whole idea of vaccines of as a sort of a promoting the reaction of so that the body itself reacts or is in a way primed to cope with the disease, whatever it is. But I find a lot of wisdom in this idea of promoting, of priming the body to react to diseases. But the idea is that to transform that into a sort of a single approach to fighting a disease is, and you know, the whole idea of fighting a disease is something that I find very alien to at least for Andean indigenous communities. People don't think like that. Or they don't think of disease as an enemy. It's something that comes and, you know, it's a visitor. And of course, you want it to go as soon as he is or it is satisfied with the visit, you know. So there is something that we call dispatching, you know, or sending it away, but treating it in a way that it's satisfied, and then go as soon as it is satisfied with the visit. That's more or less what I have heard from people. The idea is that I think there is a profound difference in the world that we live in modernity and in the traditional communities of the world. I mean, in these traditional communities, you live in a universe that does not have any limit. While in modernity is a man-made society. So whatever comes from outside that place, modernity does not treat it as a visitor, but as an alien, you know, that it's something to be feared. But that's not the case in the traditional communities. I find in whatever I have read, it's not only in the Andean peoples. I think it's all traditional peoples in the world. The world is a universe, the whole universe. So that makes for a strong difference, I think, and we should take that into account. And of course, in modernity, everything in capitalism, everything is transformed into a good that is sold, bought, and it's for profit. So that is a tremendous transmogrification, they would say, that something called a medicine get transformed to, you know. Something that we have lived in this, in our country, in Peru, is this corporatization of medicine in the past few years, a few decades, I would say. By the time I entered adulthood, I still live in a public health system. Now it's completely privatized, corporatized. And well, going back to traditional medicine, it's not a, as I say, as things are not, as the world is not divided between friends and enemies, but all as possible friends, especially. In traditional medicine, a disease is not considered an enemy, actually. So what there is at hand is like we were talking about Dr. Tu's knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine, you know, thousands of years of knowledge that makes this, especially plants and other substances, be used to alleviate diseases or conditions that weakens you. For that, I think that's the practice is still here. And during this pandemic, we have had a project with institutions in Bolivia and Peru in the Andes, and we have been made aware much more now that the use of traditional medicine is very, very widespread still in the rural areas especially. And it collides with the practice of modern medicine, of what we call the health, national health system. There was another question, Kinchi, about indigenous civilizations.
You already mentioned it. You already mentioned it, but then if you would like to say more.
No, the thing, as I was saying, the real difference, I think, is how big is your world? How big is the universe that you consider you are living in? And that, I think, it makes a whole difference with this, what we call indigenous civilizations. And we have one thing in common, I think, in those civilizations, in the indigenous people. And they live the whole universe as part of it. And so that's something that makes the behavior and, you know, a disposition, life disposition, that is completely different. And it takes a lot of opening your mind that to understand that, you know, once you have gone through school, especially modern schools.
Muchas gracias por la participación de Jorge.
Thank you very much to Jorge, who sent us this pre-recorded video. He called upon a debate on the vaccines as a common good, the centrality of traditional indigenous medicine, and also how the indigenous way of life presents a civilizational option given the current crisis. Without further ado, I want to give the floor to our brother, Magno Yarate Barros, who is part of the October the 27th movement, working in the Amazon in Venezuela. He's an activist, cultural worker, and student of medicine of native Watuja Piaroa people, one of the native populations of Venezuela. So we give the floor to Magno. Well, good morning or good afternoon. Greetings to Hernan. Greetings from the Amazon state, Venezuela. On behalf of the October the 27th movement, I would like to speak about traditional medicine, indigenous medicine, taking as a reference the Watuja people, that people we call Piaroa. However, their name is Watuja. We have a written text in order to pinpoint some elements. So we have a short but to the point presentation. The perspective of traditional medicine that we have in the Venezuelan Amazon region, taking as a reference the knowledge of the Watuja people, a millennium knowledge. We can call it a millennium central medicine. This medicine from the chiefs, shamans, is a medicine that is not isolated within academic walls. The shaman or doctor uses special ceremonies to convey his wisdom, where they learn by doing and listening without questioning, as in the doing Western academia. The shaman has as a source 3 elements: animal, vegetal, and mineral sources. Although almost always they try to heal or they use herbs, also stones like quartz, animal bones, and to create the tools and utensils used in the various rituals for healing. From this vision of the sage and wise people.
¿Nos escucha?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. So let's continue. Traditional medicine, from the shaman's perspective, is not isolated in an academia. The shaman uses special ceremonies to convey his wisdom, and we learn by seeing and listening. Different from the Western academies. From the material standpoint, shaman has as a source 3 elements: animal, vegetable, and mineral. They use plants to heal. Also, we use stones like quartz or animal bones, hair, and other things as a tool in order to conduct rituals and ceremonies. This approach is to have harmonic relation with the environment. We only extract what is required from the earth for reproduction of the medicine. Different from industries that try to increase capital and through extractivism. This harmonious relation translates into more wisdom. In shamanism, in our tribes, in spiritual processes, there is a difference between the Western logic and the ancestral wisdom. The shaman, normally we use Western logic, so we do not have expected results. We try to heal, but various approaches. A demonstrable healing process. We use 2 plus 2, But in the spiritual world, this is different. This is focused on faith and trust. An example are the prayers and songs where members of the community remain vital. They different prayers against some physical symptoms. And this is clear in this ancestral knowledge, the importance of healing. In the shamanism, we also have the spiritual demarcation. Shamans, they demarcate the territory of the community with an invisible protection to prevent factors that could be harmful against the community. Essential factor to understand this ancestral medicine is faith and trust people have regarding this medicine. When we talk about spiritual demarcation, this is a ceremony where shamans, based on their territory, they use a protection, invisible protection, to preserve the region from bad energies, bad factors, harmful elements that could affect the community. So this is what these people do. To understand this ancestral medicine is to understand then this faith and the trust. This is of the essence. And Western propaganda has been destroying, making it believe that the pill produced by Pfizer is far more effective than the concoction by our ancestors. So a proposal is to foster a platform of communication to strengthen and promote the use of traditional medicine worldwide. The pharmaceutical and real research show that they have invented diseases in the lab in order to sell the resolution. The solution has as a source the very same traditional knowledge used by these populations, but it has been expropriated to obtain profit. Ancestral medicine try to protect us against medicine. They don't want to create diseases to then sell a remedy. Regarding the pandemic, we can see the results and the statistics. In the Amazon region, for instance, in Venezuela, with a population of 146,000 people, and only 803 people have been affected, 0.005% of the total. And official death is 28 persons out of 146,000 people who live in the territory, 0.00019%. So very low rate of disease. Figures are sometimes cold and have no sentiment. We cry for those people who have died. Now, the intention is to see how low the disease rate is, despite the response of the states given the economic blockade and commercial embargo applied by the US and world powers. And this hinders the possibility to help people with the health care. So how come in Venezuela, in the Amazon, we've been able to contain COVID-19? One of the theories is precisely the use of traditional medicine. Most of the population are made by the 21 indigenous populations in this region. and they have been able to be protected from this world virus. Some elements that have an impact are, first, traditional medicine as such, with this vegetable and mineral source.
Hablamos hace rato de la demarcación.
Second, the spiritual medicine, the spiritual demarcation to protect every territory and community.
De cantos y rezos de los
Protection
chamanes.
through songs and prayers of the shamans. It looks illogical from our perspective, but if we apply the traditional knowledge, we can understand these methods. And third, the food habits, the use of fish, the various vegetables, and the fruit that we call manaca, açaí in Brazil. In the internet, you can find it, Enverbe oleracea, Euterpe oleracea, for those who want to research this fruit. Well, manaca is plays an active role in the gastronomy. 16 amino acids and minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin E, C, and B. So this is part of the diet in the Amazon, and they could have an impact in protecting against COVID-19. This concerning the food habits of these populations in the Amazon to protect them against this pandemic. And as we saw with the figures, our Amazon region has not been affected seriously by this pandemic. To close, the framework of the recognition of these diverse cultures in order for us to survive,
citaremos el artículo 122 de la
to quote Article 122 of the Venezuelan Constitution that reads, Indigenous people have the right to have comprehensive health based on their own culture and practices. The state will recognize the traditional medicine and the complementary therapies regarding the bioethical principles. In Venezuela, we recognize and we respect traditional medicine. And we close regarding the respect of civilizations and diverse civilizations. We want to quote Articles 122 of the Constitution. Indigenous people have the right to comprehensive health based on their culture and practices. The state will recognize the traditional medicine and the complementary therapies in compliance with bioethical principles. In Venezuela, we recognize and respect traditional medicine. So a shaman, Omari of the Wotuha people, have the same level as a doctor in Western culture. This is a proposal. So we want traditional medicine to be recognized in all countries of the world. Thank you very much for those who followed us. Thank you very much. Greetings. Thank you, Magno. It's been a pleasure to hear you. And thank you for your effort to share with us. To stress the latter part of his presentation, the importance of traditional medicine as a contention way against COVID in the Amazon region. And to fight to give constitutional rank traditional medicine in our countries. Then let's move forward with Madela Pacheco, member of the network of diversity in Bolivia. She has made studies in the environment. She has made contribution in traditional medicine in the rural areas. And she is going to speak from Bolivia, from Sucre. So greetings, Madela, you have the floor.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Greetings to all of you. We are here in Bolivia. Good morning. Greetings to all of you. It's so nice to hear from you. I've been following your debates. And from Bolivia, we, as peasant families, people who live there in rural areas, our brother from Peru mentioned that we welcome COVID in the indigenous civilization among peasants. It is a brother, it is a sister that have come to visit us. In this case, we organize a ritual to the new disease, to welcome the disease, so the disease can leave us and go away. So families in 2020, when the pandemic arrived in Bolivia, many families have used herbal medicine.
Le daban poca importancia y es en ese momento que también
so, although this medicine was somehow left aside, they renewed the attention to herbal medicine. Of course, this rejection of herbal medicine occurred in urban areas, not in rural areas where families traditionally use this. They resort to this medicine. They used in childbirth, etc. So this cosmovision in rural areas is very strong. Among the 36 original peasant Indian population or tribes in Bolivia, there are various methods to fight the pandemic. Families in Bolivia have renewed with their tradition. But also, they also have food produced at home. We need to renew our attachment to this peasant production of food.
Porque también todo en la vida es cíclica, pero
life is a cycle. There is a time to breathe and time to protect the Mother Earth. So in Bolivia also, since 2013, there is a law on traditional medicine, 459 law. And there they give importance to the contribution of the Andean cosmovision, original and peasant cosmovision. Traditional medicine has the same value as conventional. They go hand in hand. In hospitals, for instance, they have been resorting to traditional medicine. So they have this choice. When people go to a hospital or see a doctor, they could choose between traditional or conventional medicine. In this law, therefore, passed by Congress, we visibilize many of the actions or things that occur in the peasant and indigenous areas. And we have various areas such as naturism, various contributions that our Yatiris, our wise people make in order to counteract, in this case, the pandemic. I'm part of the network of diversity. Last year, we started with the care fabric, care network. And we use medicinal herbs that have been disseminated in radios, in internet, in various languages, Quechua, Aymara, Guarani, and Spanish. So people in various languages have information on the various plants and also know how to use these plants. So today, we realize that we are not alone in this process. These encounters among ourselves are very useful to strengthen our cause. In this pandemic, we have realized that in many neighborhoods, in urban areas, they have been able to fight the pandemic with medicinal plants like onion, Dentico, garlic in the various areas. So in many families,
han logrado contrarrestar la pandemia con
many families have not resorted to health care, and they have used these plants and they used onions, honey, which has been very used in the midst of the pandemic. And now food that is being produced by us is far more important because of this dual purpose. And we have also the production of vegetables and home gardens in order to have enough production in view of the rises in prices. So it all has led to turn ourselves to our own capabilities to produce our products. In order to fight COVID-19, we have also resorted to various teas or mates. In Bolivia, we are firmly supporting our government. Over the last 14 years, the government has been given priority to all the activities of the peasants, the farmers, and the wise men and wise women. And it has been important to receive this support. Last year, we had some difficult circumstances, but fortunately, this year, we have come back to a government that supports the peasants and the farmers. The government is launching various actions through also virtual platforms, and the government is making available textbooks on traditional medicine where they explain the different practices in 36 indigenous communities, the plants they use, so that everyone has access to these medicine and how we can counter from our own houses the consequences of the disease without leaving behind our families, our daughters and sons. So it is important that all this knowledge is made visible, and the knowledge coming from the indigenous peasant and farmers peoples. And in closing, I would like to say that as indigenous and peasants who speak Quechua, the Quechua language, I come from the Asian part of Bolivia, and in the Quechua language, we believe that we need to breathe, we need to rest. So this disease has come up to make us rest, to take a break from this very accelerated style of living. And it is important that we take this break and that we think about us human beings, that we think about the Mother Earth, to think about all the inhabitants of this planet, because we will eventually disappear from it. So the pandemic is compelling us to take a break. And this is important for us to realize how how values and precious life is. Life is a cycle, but we need to enjoy also this break. Thank you very much for your attention.
Todos los elementos que aporta para enriquecer la
Thank you very much, Nadella, for your presentation. You have made an important contribution, very interesting contribution. And what you said about taking care of our peoples were the practices of the Andean communities. Madela also said that these practices could reach out to the cities. Magno said that the indigenous culture has made it possible to contain coronavirus in the Amazon forest. And I think that the indigenous practices have done so, have framed the coronavirus. And after the coup d'etat in Bolivia this year, you go back to the promotion of all these practices, the plurinational state of Bolivia, which recognizes the indigenous peoples of Bolivia as an important part of the country. And thanks to that, you have been able to move forward in this fight. So now we are going to close the panelists' interventions from Latin America. And now we will have a look at the urban communes in Venezuela with Jesus Garcia. He is a member of the parliament. He represents the socialist commune Alto de Lídice, and he's a founding member of the Anti-Mantuano Cultural Collective, and he's a delegate of the Socialist United Party of Venezuela, PSUV. So welcome, Jesus. Good morning from here in Venezuela. It's daylight here in Venezuela. And I would like to greet with a lot of affection Professor Kinshi, Jade, and all the participants that have taken the floor, and all those who are following us through streaming. It is very interesting what we have heard so far. And as Hernan said, in spite of the fact that we are in different continents, our ideas, our thoughts, and importance that we give to traditional medicine is a common element to all of us. It is very important that we are in line when it comes to acknowledging the importance of the traditional medicine for all the peoples in the world. I would like to seize the opportunity to briefly tell you about our experience. And I would like to start by something that Katharina said and Professor Niang said when it comes to the revolution of the mind, the decolonization of the mind, and the importance of popular knowledge. Hernan said it very clearly. From the onset of the COVID-19 in our country, many people started talking about the importance of traditional knowledge in terms of medicine, herbs, and plants. Plants that have been very helpful from the onset. There is one plant called malojillo here, which is very famous. And this plant, you can use it to make teas. And it has been very useful to combat COVID-19 in Venezuela. There is another plant, which is atamel or acetaminophen, which it's being administered to treat fever and pain. And ginger as well, which is pretty known in Asia, and it is used to treat coughing. So these come from ancestral practices, and we have been using the wisdom of our indigenous forefathers and the wisdom of our grandparents, who have been the main advocates of this kind of medicine approach in Venezuela. Was, as you will know, Venezuela is a sieged country, is a blockade country, and it is very difficult for us to have access to medicines in international markets. It's inhumane what is happening in Venezuela, but it is the truth. So based on the decolonization of knowledge, we have been able to understand that Western medicine, the one that uses tests, laboratories, and pills, well, they actually come from the traditional medicine, from the treatment of some plants and herbs. They want to make us believe that is not like that, that is otherwise. But actually, in history, we can see that this knowledge has served as a basis, and we need to promote this knowledge. Hernan also showed a graph earlier where we could see how rich people are becoming richer, and while the vast majority of the population is getting poorer. So the solution that the poor of the world have is to resort to the solidarity among our peoples. And of course, to resort to this traditional knowledge that can be very useful for us in the midst of the pandemic. In our community, which is called Altos del Lídice Commune, we work with 5,000 people, 2,000 families, households, and they practice self-government. And thanks to that, we have been able to get organized and to create a commune. Within this commune, we have developed a healthcare system, which is currently acknowledged by some social movements around the world. And in the midst of this pandemic, we realized that we needed to create new mechanisms to take care of our people, to ensure health services, health care, and we set up the concept of the traditional drugstore. And we have access to some medicines by circumventing the blockade. And in this popular drugstores, we have been processing and making available antiviral medicines such as atamel, acetaminophen, and malojillo. And these medicines that we use to treat headaches and that is made available through this popular drugstore, which enables us to resort to those practices. Besides doing this, we also gave them herbs and plants so that people could be provided with these medicines. This is what we did during the crisis of coronavirus in our country. And thanks to this, we were able of understanding something that our friends from China said, that we understood that we needed to look for alternatives in terms of treatments of body diseases, such as the speaker from India said. And this year, we launched our plan, a year plan, in the doctor's offices. Not only are the doctors administering traditional Western medicine, but we also consider that we need to resort to massages, to heat, to physiotherapy, a better approach also in terms of nutrition. We have a plan of nutrition that we set up within our commune. And with all this, we will conveying a philosophy, as our friends from China said, a philosophy based on preventive medicine. We believe that it is essential that we continue promoting preventive medicine as an overriding element of our system. In a country like ours, which is in the midst of very difficult situation, preventive medicine is a must. If we do not prevent if we do not prevent diseases, we will be facing huge hardships and difficulties. So this is the reason why we have been made aware of the fact that we need to resort to traditional medicine as well. Well, allow me to thank you for the invitation. And in Venezuela, I would like to say before I close, the medicines that are going to be administered to treat COVID-19 will be free of cost. Carbativir was medicine, some drops that are going to be used to fight against COVID-19 based on Venezuelan research. This is our proposal to the world to combat COVID-19. Corbativir, that is the name of the drug. And in the population, in our communities, we used to take teas that come from our traditional knowledge, and our community has also embraced this practice. I am sure that with these tools, we will be able to prevent to prevent COVID-19. So Cheikh for our friends from China. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Jesus, for your participation. It is a very good closing because you have completed some of the elements that have been raised, the importance of the rural government, urban and community government, which is centered on production and also in meeting the needs of the community, and how you have been able to use the situation as an element that has transformed you, that has made you become more resilient. The Cuban example is also very important. And it is clear that we are not going to change the approach of Western medicine, but we can incorporate also the importance of the preventive medicine that has been developed by the Cuban friends. I will now give the floor to our dear moderator, Kinchi Lao.
Thank you very much. Actually, we have had so many wonderful speakers that we would actually like to hear much more from them. But then because of the time limit, so we would like to first proceed to the Q&A session. And first, I would like to thank the interpreters for helping us for this exchange. Since it is quite late now, now in China. It is about 11 o'clock in the evening. I would like to first give the floor to Dr. Janji Fang, who has been staying with us the whole time. So maybe Dr. Zhang, would you like to say a few words to respond to some of the speeches by others? And then I would like to see whether Patrick, you are back here to join us. Maybe you could come up next. And if Paulo would also like to say something, I would also like to ask if Dr. Diop would like to say something. Then I would like to invite any other speaker to say, to give your remarks. So Dr. Zhang, please. So now we will have Xiao Mei interpret into Spanish. Okay, Dr. Zhang, 张老师。
大家好，今天听了以上众多的伙伴朋友们的分享，非常受教育和收获很大。
I have learned a lot from this section.
人类的健康和能够把我们的真正的中医的
I hope we can contribute more to mankind to share more about Chinese medicine and its philosophy. So I want to emphasize the 3-1-2 exercise, meridian exercise. It is an exercise that could enhance our immune system if we can if you really like to learn more about this exercise, please type in our website and to get more information on how to do this exercise. Yeah, you can ask a global university about the history of how this exercise was developed. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. So they have been promoting this for a long time, and this is actually very effective. And many of us practice the 3-1-2 meridian. So now I would like to invite Patrick Bond to speak to us. Patrick, please.
Very warm greetings, Amandla. Power aware to the people. Our Johannesburg slogan. Ben Cashdan gave you a very good sense of why this vaccine as a public good is so vital. And next Friday, we're hoping that WTO trade-related intellectual property system that not only Kenya and India and Eswatini, Swaziland, and South Africa can push through with that global public goods strategy, but that China and Russia, who have their own vaccines, Sinovac and Sputnik, will actually agree that intellectual property on the vaccines and on treatment of COVID-19 is a barrier to progress. And this is why I love the Global University on Sustainability. This is why I've had, I think, Kinchi, since I got involved, because Samir Amin began to put us together. And what the late Samir Amin, Africa's greatest political economist, always did, he understood capitalism's penetration of the... I said Samir Amin was profoundly anti-capitalist, especially when it comes to monopolies like intellectual property on medicine. So he always encouraged Kinchi, and this is why the Global University of Sustainability was such a good mix. He encouraged that, and he also encouraged the respect for the non-capitalist, again, as part of resistance. So let me quickly just remind that next Friday, the Global Commons, bringing the vaccine into generic production, will be critical. I'm really hoping, can you and your comrades in China are able to lobby or emphasize that if the Chinese government and the Russian government can join South Africa, India, Eswatini, and Kenya as the 4 countries pushing for decommodifying the intellectual property to spread it. That is a respect for Western medicine, not as a capitalist commodity, but the opposite, as a commons. But the second thing I'd say, and I'll just conclude, we do have problems when we try to find the medical fusions that we want between everything I've learned about traditional medicines on the one hand, and Western technology that may be necessary when we have capitalist diseases like COVID-19. Now, the example of AIDS is critical because it was there that our own traditional medicine promoters, like the health minister, Margaret, was pushing too much on tradition and not on the Western medical and decommodified, generically produced medicine. So it was one of those moments where if the non-traditional medicines, those of you advocating so eloquently, you've taught me so much, if you can engage more strongly, and I would suggest one journal, International Journal of Health Services, it's the main anti-capitalist health journal. It's edited by Vicente Navarro, great journal. But if you can make your cases there, there'll be a much stronger alliance. Because it was set up in the early 2000s as Western medicines called antiretrovirals against African traditional medicines. Unfortunately, we didn't find the fusion, and the Western medicines were demanded by activists, and they won. And the result of life expectancy in this country and most others going from 52 up to 65 because of non-commodified commons for the medicines that are generically produced. So I will leave you with this wonderful challenge that the Global University for Sustainability is going to be a critical place to have more of these debates, to find the best of both worlds, to find where there are conflicts and how to resolve them. So I do hope, comrades, that we can find, in the spirit of Samir Amin, the anti-capitalist critique that will generalize and make commons out of Western technology, but also to the right formula for embracing the non-capitalist, the traditional resistance. You've inspired me a great deal in this session, so please keep it going. This dialectic is actually where society needs to be. Thank you. Amandla, too.
Amanda Waitu. Thank you very much, Comrade Patrick, for these wonderful remarks, especially reminding us about the spirit of Samir Amin. So now we would like to invite our dear friend Paulo to make some comments. Paulo, if you please.
Primero, muchos saludos a todos, acá de Brasil.
Greetings from Brazil. I liked very much the various presentations. I learned enormously. Here in Brazil, we don't have this widespread use of medicine, of traditional medicines. You find them in small towns, in the interior, but in medium-sized or big-sized cities, you don't find them. However, today, things are very bad in Brazil, especially in the Amazon state of Brazil. A week ago, many people, many patients were transferred to other hospitals. In Rondônia, they are also transferring patients to other hospitals because the health system is overwhelmed with the patients. There are differences, however, because rich people can go to expensive clinics in Sao Paulo. However, some of those clinics and hospitals do no longer receive people from other regions suffering from COVID. So the situation is serious. So for most of the population, they only have resort to the public health system. And most of this public health system is almost collapsed. Now we have a new variant of the virus found in Manaus, which is far more active and far more infectious. It has not reached other part of the country as a matter of time. I just wanted then to say that here we are extremely preoccupied, especially because the government is against all public policies, health policies to care for the population. So that makes things worse. Now with the vaccines, perhaps things could get better. But thank you very much. Thank you, Kinchi.
Thank you very much, Kinchi. Thank you very much, Jade.
Okay, so maybe maybe there's some connection problems. So it is getting actually quite late now. We have gone over 3 hours. So I would like to ask if the speakers have anything to say, because the whole idea of this panel is to introduce you to each other so that we could start more networking, we could start more exchanges among ourselves, and so that we can share not only ideas and practices, but also different visions, different cosmovisions. And so maybe please, if you would like to speak, then please unmute yourself. So Katharina, would you like to say something, or Ben, or Dr. Niang?
I only have a few minutes left. I have to go soon, but I can't even express to all of you how moving it has been for me to hear from traditional medicine experts from all the way from China all the way to the Amazon and Peru. It is so moving, and it's something I so strongly believe in. I was raised that way by a mother amongst 8 children, and we have never taken antibiotics, and we always trusted herbs. I raised 3 kids on traditional Chinese medicine, and I take acupuncture every week. So I personally have this experience. But I have to say that my experiences in East Africa have also told me that, as somebody said, I think the Professor Cheikh Niang said it from Senegal, it is in the hands of women. I strongly believe so. The care of the especially in malaria, the care for the children is in the hands of the women. And I think treating COVID, treating malaria, it has been proven that it is possible with herbal treatment, good nutrition, self-care, taking this into your hands. I do think vaccines and other medicines have their place. I do think that a combination of these treatments as it is practiced in Chinese hospitals, what I've heard, is the way to go. But I mean, 500,000 children dead every year is just a catastrophe that has been going on for so many decades before COVID and will go on after COVID, that as long as we don't have another way, we have to go with the herbal way. And I just wanted to say, because of COVID, it will be 1 million children estimated this year dead from malaria in East Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. And also, I want to say, because we have heard so much from Chinese experts, in 1982, the Chinese government offered to the WHO in a big conference in Beijing to give artemisinin to Africa for free to stop the malaria pandemic. And the WHO and the pharmaceutical companies from the West refused this offer in 1982. We estimate that up to 30 million people died because of this refusal, because the WHO only admitted the artemisinin as a first-line treatment for malaria in the early 2000s. So we had 30 years without any functioning medicine in Africa for malaria, and millions of deaths. And UU2 only got the Nobel Prize 40 years after her discovery. So I think this is the capitalist system of dealing with severe illnesses and deaths. And I think we all have to get together. And I think between just what are we now, 31 people, and our viewers, I think we all have the energy to do this. So thank you for letting me be a part of this and seeing such incredible wisdom together here. Thank you.
Thank you, Katharina. Well, those of you who missed the film that we screened with the English subtitles, then you still have a chance to watch it. That will be in 1 hour. So 1 hour later, then on this same Zoom, then you can see the film with the Spanish subtitles. But most of it is being, the spoken language is mostly English with some of the local African dialects. So you could still try to watch it. If I wonder if there's any other speaker who would like to say something. Okay, so I know it is getting very late now, and thanks again to our interpreters. I would like to give Hernan 1 minute to say a few words, and then I will just wrap up very quickly. So Hernan, please.
Gracias. Gracias, Kinchi. Gracias a todas y a todos los panelistas. Ha sido realmente una oportunidad, un privilegio.
Thank you to the panelists. It's been a privilege to share this wisdom, as Katharina expressed. From here, Venezuela, we are very thankful. We exchanged with Magno and Jesus, and it was very interesting panel. I want to stress 2 things. First, COVID and the global pandemic has been a catalyst of a civilizational crisis that is more and more clear. And it has naked the contradiction and antagonistic characteristic of capitalism, Western civilization, regarding the reproduction of life. the current model of civilization presents what is happening in the US. Large number of resources, which you check the statistics of which nation was better shaped to tackle such an emergency. Well, the United States were the first. However, the US has given the priority to ensure the protection of the economy. So now, Mr. Bezos and Musk and 1% of the population today are richer than ever, while the rest of the population have serious problems to survive. So I'd like to close by saying that it is of the essence to make efforts to include in the political agenda all that is related to communal aspects to protect life. And traditional medicine should be part and parcel of our political agenda. We need to continue with the seminars and reflections, as Kenji and Jade said, and thank you very much for your effort. We need to produce reflections, articles to reflect upon this issue. From Venezuela, we would like to see if we can create like a brigade or exchange fields on traditional medicine, because the wealth of knowledge that we've been sharing today, I'd like that after the pandemic, we might have some international brigade and we receive people from India, Africa, Asia to share with us their experience in traditional medicine. Thank you again. Thank you and greetings from the Bolivarian Venezuela. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. We have a reader where we have put a lot of articles and also the writings of the speakers from tonight. So you could go to Global University for Sustainability, and then under this session on the traditional medicines, you can find the reader with a lot of readings. We also will be hosting an Agora session, which is on the 31st of January, and that would be 10 o'clock in the evening, China time, and 2 p.m. UTC time. So please come to see us at the exchange. So that is a place where we welcome everybody to have come to a chat. And we will be linking up with you to consider further exchanges. And we will be having the 8th South-South Forum on Sustainability in the last 10 days of June this year. And we will be organizing several panels on the question of traditional medicine. So thank you again. Thank you especially to all our interpreters for doing this long interpreting. And I also thank you, thanks to all the speakers for joining us. So have a good night and have a good day. Bye.